I like to keep my butter in the bog. Oh yeah, it's perfectly preserved.
Hey, Mark. What the? Mark, what are you doing on the ground?
Oh, hey Taylor, come check this out.
What are you doing down in this wet bog, Mark?
Oh, Taylor, bogs are my favorite. They have some of the coolest plants you're gonna find anywhere.
All right, let's check some out.
Check out this little guy. So this is a sundew plant. They're super cool because they're carnivorous. You see these shining, shimmering droplets of dew? Well, they're not really dew at all. Sundews secrete this sticky fluid that'll trap any bug unlucky enough to crawl across it. And then the plant digests the bug alive. It's mind-boggling.
Whoa, so plants eat animals?
You better believe it, baby.
All right, Mark, what do we have here?
This is my favorite plant in the whole world. Rhododendron groenlandicum, Labrador tea. You can always tell Labrador tea by the furry orange undersides to the leaves. Not only does it smell amazing and look super cool, but you can make a delicious, nutritious, and medicinal tea out of the leaves. But don't try that at home without parental supervision.
All right, Mark, tell us a little bit more about bogs.
Well, what I think makes bogs really cool is the fact that they're a bit of an extreme environment. Bogs, peatlands of all kinds, so like fens, swamps, they're extremely low in nutrients. Stuff doesn't really decay here, and so there's not a lot of free nutrients available for plants to suck up as they grow. That's part of the reason why they have to eat bugs. So when you look down in a bog, you see all this moss, and if you were to dig down into the moss, you'd find even more moss underneath. And if you were to dig down beneath that moss, what do you think you'd find under that?
More moss.
Exactly. It just hasn't decayed. In fact, you can kind of think about like a peatland as the very first step in creating, the oil reserves that are found deep down around the world. Like when you're burning oil and other fossil fuels, you're burning really, really, really old organic matter. And that's kind of what's happening in this bog. It's accumulating without ever being able to fully decompose. And so you've got these super nutrient poor environments that plants and animals have to get really creative in order to survive in. That's fantastic!
So nothing decomposes in a bog?
Well, stuff does decompose, but very, very slowly.
Wow, all this science is making me hungry.
Well, that's kind of one of the other cool things about bogs is because there's no decomposition, they're really good for preserving stuff. In fact, why don't we have a little snack? I like to keep my butter in the bog. Oh yeah, it's perfectly preserved. Yeah, so before fridges and freezers and other kind of more reliable methods of food preservation, people that lived in boggy areas would sometimes just put food that they wanted to preserve in the peat. So in Britain and Ireland, people have found thousands of years old butter that's still perfectly good. Oh, for Pete's sake.
So Mark, what are you even doing here anyway today?
Well, I'm on a search.
A search?
I'm looking for a bog body.
What?
So in lots of places with lots of peat moss and peat bogs, they found dead, perfectly preserved human beings. Some of them almost 10,000 years old. Now, they've never found one in Canada, but Canada has a lot of bog habitat. So maybe I'll be the person to find the first Canadian bog man. You better believe it, baby!
Perfectly preserved humans. What, so they got like skin and everything still?
Everything, even their clothing. They're sort of super tannin-rich water that is just like saturating all of this peat moss. It's like the ultimate preservative. You put something in that type of substrate, It's kind of like Han Solo in Star Wars when he's in the carbonite, perfectly preserved, thousands of years. It's incredible.
Whoa. All right, Mark, my final question for you for the day. What's the difference between a bog and a marsh?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Taylor. Really, it's a question of degrees. A marsh, a fen, a bog, they're all peatlands. They're characterized by a lot of vegetation that never decays. But the other sort of important element is how much water is in that system. So a marsh is usually a lot wetter than a bog, and it can also support some grasses and other stuff like that. A bog, like this, you've got big trees, sometimes even old trees growing out of it, and then kind of in between the two, you've got a fen. So basically, like a bog is drier than a fen, and a fen is drier than a marsh. But
All
the
right.
thing that is similar through all of those habitats, very low nutrients, highly acidic soil, very low rates of decomposition, and butter everywhere.
Wow, Mark, thanks for that great lesson. We'll see you around town.
Totally. If I don't get too bogged down with work.
Oh, Mark.